All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and why don't I go ahead and just get us introduced and start that. And if people I think will join us and can hop on in. That way we can be kind of mindful of everybody's time. The last one of these went right at an hour, so it was I think it's a good idea to go ahead and start. My name is Tanner Pickett, and I work here at Montreat Conference Center, and we started putting these on last year as just an extra resource for people who do youth ministry work. Matt was one of the presenters last year, and this was something that people kept asking about. So we decided to do it again. This will let me open up my chat real quick. This is something that we will actually be recording. We are recording right now, actually. So this will also be available on our website at some point in the next little bit. Matt, you feel free to share this with whoever you need to as well. But yeah, so this is something we started last year and got some good response to. The idea here is just to provide extra resources to people, to bring in some experts in the field, some other organizations that are really doing this work on a regular basis, and really provide an opportunity to for people to share knowledge, network, etc. So a couple of housekeeping things really quickly. Please try to make sure to mute yourself when you're not talking. That would be a really helpful thing, as Matt or whoever it is that's speaking, so they don't have to, talk over dogs barking or whatever. Also, there is a chat feature at the bottom here. I will let me try to make sure this is going out to everyone. This is a helpful way to, you feel free to drum questions up there. I'll try to be watching this as the Zoom goes, so Matt doesn't have to try to pay attention to both of these things. But he might also be watching those as well. So let's go ahead and introduce Matt, and let Matt introduce his organization a little bit, and then I'm going to really just let him take it away. He might determine whether he wants you to ask questions throughout and interrupt them, or whether he wants you to hold it off till the end, and I'll just let that be his show. And so once we're done, we'll have maybe just a few minutes wrap up for questions, and then either about Matt's presentation, or about his organization, or about Montreat in general, or youth commerce. I'm happy to answer those things as well, but it doesn't really have to even go into that unless you need it to. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Matt Vaughan.
Hi there. I'm real glad you're all here. There's a few names I recognize in the window, which is awesome. This is great. I have known Tanner for quite a bit. Montreat Conference Center, if you're new to this, is a really wonderful place in the mountains of North Carolina. We partner with them to lead conferences. They work with thousands of youth every summer at camps and conferences. And we've been involved in training some of the leaders that come to those conferences in the summertime. And so we're really pleased to be able to be a part of that. Montreat does a really good job of reaching out to folks nationally. They are multi-denominational. While their roots are in Presbyterianism, we have folks who are from multiple denominations who are already on this project, which is really great. My name's Matt. I lead Youth Ministry Institute Midwest. We are a training and consulting nonprofit organization based in Kansas City area. And we work with folks all through Kansas, Nebraska, Missouri, Midwest, and Montreat is a really wonderful and dedicated partner to us. I do have some slides that I'm going to show throughout the short webinar that I'll be teaching today. This is the same material that we teach every month in our cohort learning program. We have a really lively and exciting group of folks who come to Kansas City every month to hear from youth ministers, seminary professors, pastors, and other experts in a variety of different ways. And this is one of the classes that we teach about working with volunteers and parents, critical parts of youth ministry. And this conversation is not just for me to share expertise, but is for you to also share some of the things that you're doing. My hope is that you'll walk away from this with a few things that you'll be able to use in your own volunteer training sessions. So it would be great if we could introduce one another and go from there. Tanner, would you mind doing the introductions?
Sure thing. Yeah, so my name is Tanner Pickett. I work in the marketing and sales department here and here in Montreat. Live in Black Mountain, which is just down the road if you're not familiar with that. And been here for about 5 years now and get to work with a lot of great people. So I enjoy that. Kathleen, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself? Maybe we'll just kind of go around and you can just call the next person on the screen if you want. That way we're not talking over each other.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Higgins. I'm in Manhattan at First United Methodist Church. I started out as a volunteer back in July of this past summer and just recently got hired on as a permanent youth director. I guess Jordan's the next one in line, so.
Congratulations, Kathleen. Great to see you.
Hey, I'm Jordan, and I am a transitional associate pastor for youth and young adults at Kirk of Kildare Presbyterian in Cary, and just trying to figure out what to do with these lovely parents that I work with. So, and I guess Laura is the next one I see.
My name is Laura Robertson. I'm at Starmount Presbyterian in Greensboro. I'm the youth and young adult resident, and I'm just here for knowledge. The next person I see is Chris.
Hi, am I on? Chris Nord. I am from Topeka, Kansas, Susanna Wesley, and I've been working with youth for a couple of years now, so that's all I got.
Welcome, Chris.
See Shelby next on mine.
Hi, I'm Shelby Etheridge Hairsty. I'm in Rockville, Maryland, which is a suburb of Washington, and I'm the associate pastor for Christian Formation and Family Ministry, and I've been here for about 5 years. And I don't love being on video, so I thought I would show my face to introduce myself, and then I'll probably turn my video off. So
I love the honesty. That's great. We'll still call on you, and if you have anything you wanted to add, put it in the chat feature so you don't have to wave your hands or anything. That's great.
Okay.
And I can totally relate. So
I know this is Tanner. Tanner just barely on the screen there.
that's usually because I'm eating something. And I'm just kind of ducking out of the screen. Anyway, yeah. So go ahead and maybe you want to tag someone else, Shelby?
Oh, yes. Tina is next on my screen, I think.
Okay, can y'all hear me? Oh,
yep.
Okay, good. All right. Tina Ritchie from First Presbyterian Church in Fenton, Michigan. I'm the youth director / CE director here at our church. I've been doing this for about 8 years now. And I'm just really struggling with getting folks engaged. And I've tried the IYM stuff and the Mark DeVries stuff and talking with people and investing a lot of time and energy. And it's just been very difficult to get parents and other adults involved.
I hear you, Tina. Where are you from again? I didn't hear that.
Oh, sorry, Fenton, Michigan.
Fenton, Michigan.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
And I think Matt is the last one. Matt J is the last one I've got on my screen right now. Matt, we're just doing quick little introductions. If you've got a second, you can do that.
Matt's from Kearney, Nebraska. He's from First Methodist Church. He just texted me. He's trying to get this thing working, so he may not have audio yet. But I imagine he'll be on in just a minute.
Okay.
Jordan, I didn't catch where you were from. Can you share that again?
Yeah, I'm in Cary, North Carolina.
Okay. Cool. Kathleen from Manhattan. This is a great group. Good. And I had 2 other people ask for the recording afterwards, so we'll make sure that we get that information to them, which will be great.
Right, and we'll post this on our website and social media stuff as well, and it'll live there in perpetuity. So you can always go back to it or share it with other people. Yeah, so should be good.
Okay, Tanner, is there a way for me to share some slides on this? Can you give me that permission?
Yeah, you should be able to just do it. There should be at the bottom. There's a little thing that says share screen. I've watched your slides pop up a few times.
Is that it?
Yeah,
You've got me?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. So if you'd like the slides, I'll put my email address at the end of this. You can also, if you know Tanner or myself, I'll be happy to share these with you. My goal is to be able to provide you with a few things that you can use in your training sessions and a few things that you can use when you recruit parents and volunteers to be involved. So if you see something you like, feel free to ask for it. If you see something that's not helpful to you, maybe there's a way we can make it work. First, I want you to see my family. These are my great folks that I have at home. The thing that I'm really excited about is my oldest son is 16, just started driving, and it is wild to have this to be in this place where I got teenagers at home. Jack is 12, and he's loves being the baby in the family. I have served 4 churches in youth ministry over 20 years, 2 in an interim capacity. I now lead a nonprofit. This is the work that I do full time. I've led groups of 8, 15, 45, and 130. I spent 12 years at Village Presbyterian Church, a 4,000 member church. And then I also spent a year at Lawrence First Presbyterian Church, and I had a youth group of 5 kids. So for me to be able to work with both groups has been really helpful and informative. I launched this nonprofit 5 years ago, and we're supported by several ministries within the United Methodist and Presbyterian churches. And I'll also share this plug towards the end of the presentation here. This is something that we're doing in partnership with Montreat. Next January, we are leading a conference for youth ministers, for pastors, for volunteers in youth ministry, and we're going to be focusing on cohorts. So stay tuned to this. If you're on the Montreat mailing list or on my mailing list, we will keep you informed about this. And last, I've got a few goals for today before we get started. These are the 4. First, to discern our own leadership style. I think self-awareness is the best thing that we can have as leaders, is to know where we're strong and where we need help. Second, to share the vision and importance of shared leadership. Third, look at Jesus' example of leadership in Scripture. And 4, if you have any questions in conversation, I certainly want to include you in that. So discerning how our leadership impacts others. Sorry about the stock photo there, but it's helpful. What I'd like to do is to start with a discussion exercise. This is taken from this book here, which is called Teaming Up, Shared Leadership in Youth Ministry. It was published a long time ago, as you can tell from this awesome cover right here. But this book is still in print. I use it. I teach at St. Paul School of Theology, and I use this as required text. The benefit of this book is that there are no pictures inside, so you don't know how old it is or when it was published just by looking at the text. But we're going to use a practice in this text. If you can imagine 5 signs around the room. Identifying your style of leadership is good self-awareness. My pastor, when I started in youth ministry, said, Matt, you don't need to be all things to all people. You don't need to be empathetic as long as somebody on your volunteer team is. You don't need to be wild and crazy as long as somebody on your volunteer team is. And so I'm going to read a few case studies and try and identify where we are as a group in terms of leadership styles. And this is something that you can do with your volunteers, with your parents. You can even do this with your young people who are in leadership. And so these are the 5 signs that I would paste around the room if I were doing a leadership training exercise. Going from left to right around the room, the first one would be the ultimate authority. All of you have been in a situation where you've had to make the decision. You get the information needed, you take charge, you tell the group what to do. The second leadership style is the chief. Chief works out a decision or a solution to a problem, presents it to the group, invites questions and comments, but has control. The third, kind of the middle leadership style, is the consultor. Consultor consults the group before making the decision, defines the options, but keeps veto power. The fourth is the democratizer. This encourages the group to make the decision. The group and the leader are equals. There's shared power here. There's shared conversation. The leader guides the process and does not sway. And the last, right over here on the right, is the bus driver, the hands-off. Gives the group complete autonomy, but knows the location of the fire extinguisher. There are times when that kind of leader is helpful. So I'm going to read a few case studies here, and what I'd like to do is to have each of you chime in and say where you would be on this. Okay, the first case study. You look at the calendar and you see that your leadership care group has the program this Sunday night on planning for an event. It's Tuesday and your leadership team of young people has not done anything about it. What kind of leader would you be? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call out the different leadership styles. And if you're one of these leadership styles, why don't you either chat in the box or we can turn your mute off and have you part of this. Okay. If you were a ultimate authority in this kind of case study, identify yourself. Who would that be? Okay, nobody's taking charge. It's Tuesday afternoon. Okay, Shelby says ultimate authority for sure. Tanner's raising his hand. Okay, chief. How many of you would be chiefs? It's Tuesday afternoon. Your youth who said they would plan have done nothing. How many of you would be a chief? You would try and work out a solution and present it. You still have control, but they're the ones who would be the ones that would make the decision. Okay, Jordan's got her hand up. Matt says he'd probably be there. Tina's there. Okay, the consultor, this is Tuesday, consults the group, makes it and in making the decision, keeps veto power, but you're still allowing the young people to be in charge here. Anybody in the consultor? I would assume nobody's a democratizer or a bus driver based on this. Anybody a democratizer or a bus driver? Yeah. Yeah, your senior pastor is watching. Your senior pastor knows that your programming is coming this weekend. So probably no one's going to be the bus driver in this situation. Okay, so how do we manage that? Let's see, we've got the ultimate authority, the chief. Any consultors? Why don't we turn the mute off? I want to hear from some of you about why you chose what you chose. Okay. Shelby, why did you choose the ultimate authority?
I was just laughing because that's like really my personality type. I can't help but default to that, especially if it's a Tuesday and I want to have a real weekend where I don't check email. I'm going to try and get it done in the next 3 days as much as possible. And like just speaking personally, I know that's one of my huge weaknesses when it comes to like collaborative ministry with youth and parents and volunteers, especially because I have such a tendency to take it, to just do it because it seems easier to me.
Yeah. Have you had situations where they've been able to pick it up for you and they've surprised you?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Like
good.
Regularly, I would say. Yet somehow I still always default to that position.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. We had a few people who were in the chief. Tanner was in the chief. Laura was in the chief. Kathleen was in the chief. Matt was either consultor or chief. Let's hear from some of you why you chose this. I'm listening.
So I kind of felt like just that specific example, I mean, I feel like I kind of probably would weave in and out of these things, right? So not a hard and fast definition, but I really do, in my normal day-to-day functioning at work, while I might have the ultimate, have control over the ultimate outcome, I really do try to like get people to, try to find some consensus, or at least, try to make sure that people are coming up with their own ideas to do things, because often I find that if it's their idea, they're a lot more likely to do it. So anyway.
Good.
I've kind of come from a point of view, I fall between the ultimate authority and the chief, in that I have consulted with everybody prior to Tuesday, probably several months ago, and have laid out the schedule and the plan through the several months at least. So I've kind of done both. I've gotten everybody's opinions, and then I've laid out the plan from there on out.
Good. All good answers. We can keep going on this one. I'm going to share another case study, and I would love to hear is some responses on this one as well. Okay. Here's your next case study. You are on the senior high beach trip. This is the first time you have been to this particular beach. 3 of the boys ask if curfew can be changed from 11 o'clock to 1 a.m. What would you do? And let's just go ahead and say that this is the last night of the trip. So you're on a senior high beach trip. They want to move the curfew from 11 o'clock to 1 a.m. Do you take ultimate authority, chief, consultor, democratizer, or bus driver, hands off?
What's their reason for doing it?
Oh, they're coming to you and they just want to stay up later. That's what they're telling you.
Are they in a room with freshmen, or are they in a room with all seniors?
Oh, so many questions. You know your group best. That will probably, your group will probably influence the way you answer this question. So if you have a group of all seniors who are straight A students and all of their parents on the trip, that might influence your way more than if they're all freshmen and they are delinquents, for example.
Have they caused problems in the past?
Yeah, there are so many questions, Kathleen. I don't know. You know your group best. I don't know. What's your group like?
I'm assuming that this is the better students and that I can trust them. And as long as they stay in their sleeping area, whatever it is, then they can stay up as long as they're not loud. Great.
Okay, so I sound like that you're the consultor here. You're right in the middle. You're keeping veto power, but you're allowing them to be involved in the decision.
They're the seniors. You're supposed to give them a little bit more leeway because they are supposed to be your examples.
Yeah, yeah.
So hopefully I can trust them.
That's the idea. Others?
Yeah, I'd say I'd probably the same thing. I mean, with my current group, I would be either the consultor or maybe even the democratizer, especially with the older kids. But I've had many groups before where I would just say, no, you cannot do that.
Right.
And yeah, just inviting them to think about if the next day, you know, if they have to go back to school, if they have a ton of homework on Sunday they have to do when they get home on Sunday, or if it's the summertime, then that's a little different, stuff like that.
Yeah. Let me share another case study. You've got a group of young people who have planned the program for the night. One of the other youth who is not on the planning team says to you right at the beginning of the evening, no one ever wants to play their stupid games. How do you respond to that young person? Are you the bus driver, completely hands off? Do you take charge, pull that kid behind the door, and let them know what you're thinking? Do you listen to them? Remember, these kids have spent some time to plan this, and it's the young people who are in charge tonight.
Have we tried playing the games yet?
No, well, you have before, and they didn't like it before.
Oh, okay. I would probably pull the youth group aside and say, you know, look, they've planned this. We need to give it a chance. And this is, in my opinion, a lesson learned kind of thing where you can show respect for the fact that somebody has planned for your activity and we need to follow through with it.
Laura said the same thing on chat here. She said, listen, maybe invite them to the next planning group, but encourage them to respect the time and effort the other kids made.
Yeah.
That's definitely the kind of the chief spot. You're not coming down hard, but you're coming down firm. Matt Jones says same thing here, what Laura said. So here's the thing. When you get a group of volunteers together, even a group of parents together, everybody's going to have a different perspective on how decisions are made. There are going to be some people who look to you, and there are going to be some people who look to the group to make all of these decisions. And when you are the one who is making all of the decisions, the good news is you've got ultimate control. The bad news is when something falls apart, everything falls on you. And so it's very important to have a good team in place that can be able to provide support to one another. And likewise, as I started at the beginning, who have different gifts and skills. And so it's wise and it's fine for your volunteers or your parents to stand by different signs when you do this activity in a training session or in a parent team, because folks come to this place from different places. If I was a parent and I was a young troublemaker as a kiddo, I might swing the pendulum the other way and say we need to have the ultimate authority and be firm and strict in every situation. Or I may be completely hands off and say, hey, I turned out okay. And have some conversation about that, and why we do ministry the way we do is important. The second goal I want to share with you is the goal of sharing vision in shared leadership. And so building a team matters. If you can, imagine a group of 12 students sitting in front of you at a weekend leadership retreat. What would you say to them? What would you do with them? Who would be with you? How would your other adult leaders be involved? What would happen if you were suddenly sick, and who would lead? So there's a lot of questions here. First of all, let's just open it up and say, what would you do with a group of young people at a leadership retreat like this? You can use the chat feature, or you can chime in here. Shelby says, invite them to dream about what youth could be like. That's great. And using a flip chart or a whiteboard and being able to write down some of their ideas is really good. It's helpful to have young people to affirm what they're thinking. What else would you do with these 12 students? Weekend retreat. Matt says lots of team building, bonding, some planning, and vision casting. Okay, good. Who would be with you at this leadership retreat in terms of adults? Some of your churches may have parents. Some of you may be in college towns. Some of you may have young adults who are helping. Some of you may have staff. Kathleen indicates that she'd have college interns. Kathleen works at Manhattan, Kansas, which is a college town. Shelby, a mix of parents and volunteers. Chris says a few parents. That's what my church would be like. It would be a few parents. How would your other adults be involved in this leadership retreat? This is the hard part. So how do you utilize these folks? Shelby says a lot of listening. Tina says asking questions, supplies, games, food prep. Matt says for me would depend on their current involvement with the group and those in particular. Kathleen says parent committees to help plan. And last is what would happen if you were suddenly sick, who would lead? I was on one of my first mission trips several years ago, and I broke my leg playing softball the second night of the mission trip. It changed the way that we did leadership the rest of the week because I couldn't be on a mission site. And so I have parents who are willing to take on jobs, and those who were involved was critical, but we couldn't just start there. We had to be ready. What I recommend is this, that we use a biblical model. Group size matters. So we're going to borrow what Young Life uses, the 12-3-1 model. I think it's really great. They advocate that there are 12 disciples and 3 were closest to Jesus. And so you can expand the numbers. If your youth group is bigger, great. You can go bigger than 12. But 12-3-1 is pretty simple. So how does your ministry support this 12-3-1 model? Who are the 12 primary leaders in your ministry and the 3 strongest? So if I were meeting with my group of volunteers in a training session, I would say, who are the 12 primary young people, youth, who are leaders in our ministry? Who are the 3 that are strongest? Rather than to say that the group of volunteers, who are you, which one of you 12 or which one of you 7 are the 3 strongest? That doesn't make sense, but I'd certainly use this in a conversation anyway. And how do we empower them to lead in ministry? One of the first mission trips I went on years ago, not the one where I broke my leg, but another one, I came back and many of the adults were angry with me. And part of the reason why they were angry with me was because they didn't have jobs. And so the job that they decided to take on for themselves was one of being critical. And so you can have an adult. I've got an adult who's really good with numbers, but not good with kids. And he is great at paying for meals and running the budget and planning our stops. I've got another parent who's empathetic, and he is wonderful at caring for kids who are homesick. I've got another parent who is wicked smart, and she is great at helping me problem solve. And so to find out each person's strength is going to be pretty critical. This is a no-brainer for you, but it's important that you do this with your parents. It's important that you do this with your volunteers. Let me talk on one more thing before we go to the next slide. Some of you are entering mission trip season. And so mission trip season, many of you will have a parent meeting. And so rather than just go through the itinerary and the packing list, why don't you take 15 minutes to check in with them and teach and let them know what you're doing in youth ministry and how your different leaders are involved, and invite others to be involved in that process. Since they're already showing up anyway, you might as well spend some time visiting with them. Any thoughts about that before I go to the next slide? This is good. This is a slide that I use in my seminary class that I teach at St. Paul School of Theology. Kenda Creasy Dean wrote this wonderful, lovely book called Almost Christian. It was based on the ongoing National Study of Youth and Religion, which began in 2005. This is my book, lots of bookmarks in it. And in this, she found lots of different research variables. There are 2 that were really strong. These were the 6 most important research variables, and the 2 that were super strong were these. Teen had a religious experience before entering young adulthood, usually a transformational faith experience like camp, conference, or mission trip. I would assume all of you do that within the context of your mission or ministry year in youth ministry. It's a no-brainer. Having an especially moving experience leads towards a stronger faith. Trips lead towards witnessing a miracle or experiencing an answer to prayer are huge. And so how do you train your adults to lead in ministry on these trips? Mark DeVries advocates in his book, Sustainable Youth Ministry, that we have not just 1 adult for every 5 kids, but actually 5 adults for every young person that is involved in ministry. And that's also echoed in Kara Powell's book, Growing Faith, which I don't have a copy of in front of me, but she talks about the importance of having young people connected to adults. The second thing that Kenda Creasy Dean found is that parental religious involvement was high while teen was in high school. Encourage parents to share what they know about their faith. So my question is this: how many of you, if you were to have a parent meeting and to say to them, what's the most important thing in developing, or what's the most important person in developing the faith life of your teenager? How many people would say their friends? How many people would say their youth group? How many people would say their pastor, but not their parents? I think most would. Would you be surprised to hear that parents are the most influential? Shelby says, I like to terrify parents by telling them that they are their children's primary Christian educator, and that's exactly right. Exactly right. Young people who hear from their parents about Christian faith tend to be stronger in their faith. And University of Pennsylvania found in 2007 that young people who have a strong faith life are less likely to be involved in risky behavior and more likely to achieve academic success. So faith is important, but it's also measurable. The next piece I want to share with you is goal number 3. Jesus' model of leadership in a 3-step program. It sounds like we're in recovery or something, but maybe we are. Somebody here said, let's see, Tina said it's difficult and very hard to get adults involved. So Tina, I'm with you here in this recovery process. What I'd like to do is to read Matthew 4:18 through 20. Is there somebody who has access to the screen who'd be willing to read that so we have a different voice?
As he walked by the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fish for people." Immediately they left their nest and followed them.
Perfect. Thank you, Kathleen. Here are the takeaways that I love about this. Jesus didn't just ask the disciples to follow him. He told them why he would follow them. And I think this is a great model that we can use when we recruit adults and volunteers to be involved in ministry. Our tendency is to send out a letter at the beginning of the school year and say, we need volunteers. Our tendency is to say from the pulpit, hey, if you'd like to be a teacher, we'd love to have you. But what Jesus teaches us is that we have to make a personal ask. We have to go and visit people one-on-one and discern how they can be involved in our ministry, not just would they be involved in our ministry. What Jesus teaches us is that when he saw Simon Peter and Andrew, he said, here is what you can do if you follow me. So how do we ask our parents and volunteers to be part of the team? Here's the data that backs this up. 2015 Pew Research study published in the Washington Post had this to say. Growing church clergy members in the study took Jesus' command to go and make disciples literally. Thus, they held the conviction it's very important to encourage non-Christians to become Christians and less likely to put effort into converting non-Christians. And so the whole point of why I bring this up is that inviting others to be part of your team is ministry. It is discipleship, not just for your young people, but it is for the volunteers that are involved in your ministry. So how can they be part of this great goal to be able to care for the faith lives of our young people? Anybody have a success story that you want to share before I hit the next slide of somebody who was a peripheral member of your faith community who came forward as a volunteer and became changed by that process? I have Brad in my youth group who started volunteering because he wanted to go on our ski trip. Brad likes to ski. And he got to know those kids, and a few in particular really got to know Brad very well. And Brad's been on a couple other ski trips, so Brad has been faithful in being there every Wednesday night and has been really, really good at reaching out to this group of boys who are knuckleheads, who I don't necessarily get along with, but are perfect fits for someone like Brad. And so to see him be able to come in and feel good about doing ministry for young people and seeing the results of that over an extended period of time, that's why we do this. That's why Brad does it. And so to be able to ask Brad to be able to share testimony about that to others is a really important tool that we use in recruiting. Because I'm the one that needs help. The young people are the one that needs help, but Brad can vocalize why his life was changed as a result of helping.
I could share an example.
Love it. Love it. Go ahead.
I have a woman, 74 years old. She went on our mission trip with us, our high school mission trip last year. And she's not had children of her own, scared to death to be around kids, but she's just a ball. And I said, Nancy, I think you're really going to have a great time with these kids. Those kids call her Fancy Grammy Nancy. Nancy's in. She's like, are we going again this year? Those kids come up and hug her, and she feels connected to a place in the church where she didn't feel so connected before, even with the members of her own generation.
I love it. Thanks, Tina. That's really awesome. We have an adult that was part of our program for about 4 years. Her name's Judy. She's retired, and she's a lot like Nancy. She was able to connect with a group of girls who just loved her, and she was faithful and was warmed by that experience. This is the lesson on this. So diversify your ask. You might need to ask in many different ways. I always take the positivity that if someone says no, they don't mean no forever. They just mean no right now. Develop and maintain relationships. I worked on Judy for a long time. She's the one like Nancy that Tina just mentioned. I asked Judy to help out for a while, and Judy said, no, I'm too old. Those kids wouldn't like me. And turned out she was very loved once she said yes. Ask in person, not by email, newsletter, announcement, and that's where it's going to be important to work with your pastor and your staff to identify leaders who might be willing to be involved. If you've got 5th grade parents or 6th grade parents who want to move into the youth ministry, talking with your children's folks is helpful. And know that inviting people to volunteer is inviting them to a call. How is God empowering you as a youth minister pastor to lead in this way? Second scripture, Matthew 9 through 12. Anybody that would that can see the screen that would like to read? I'm happy to read, but would love to have a different voice. I'll read this time. As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man called Matthew, that's me, sitting at the tax booth, and he said to him, "Follow me." And he got up and followed him. And as he sat at dinner in the house, many tax collectors and sinners came and were sitting with him and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" But when he heard this, he said, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick." These are the takeaways that I pull out of this. When Jesus found the disciples, he gave them roles aligned with their gifts. And so when Jesus says, those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick do, what he is leaning on is the fact that even Matthew, who is despised by many, had gifts to offer. And so how was Jesus able to use those gifts in ministry? I find it interesting that he also had a person who was in the disciples who did not care for Roman leadership. And so there was this tension that was involved. How can we practice this model with our parents and volunteers? Meaning sometimes we're going to get folks who have different opposing views on things. Are they leaders who are hospitable, who are welcome others, who are relational, who are organized, who can share testimony? And the last piece, this is the important part. Sharing job descriptions so people know why they're saying yes. And so Nancy's job description and Tina's youth group, I don't know if she had a written job description, but she could articulate what it was. And so to be able to use that is important. Short-term asks are helpful. I'd love to hear on the chat feature if there's any of you who do short-term volunteers. If you have folks who you asked to say, hey, would you help out with this mission trip? Would you help out with this fundraiser? Would you help out with this confirmation small group, which has an ending point so that people know that they're not volunteering forever. If you do that, I'd love to see it in the chat feature. And then allows people to use gifts in specific ways. Hope I didn't lose you all. Yay, Shelby's in there. I found that short-term asks were a great conduit to get people familiar with youth ministry. Yes. Yes, Tina says this is how I get most of my volunteers. I love confirmation is a great way to get volunteers because confirmation has a starting point and it has an ending point. And so to be able to get a volunteer to step in and to say, yeah, I'd be willing to work with either one person or a group of young people for a specific amount of time. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes we can move them into another volunteer position down the road, which is helpful. Fundraisers, a great way to get people involved for either a one-time or a short-term project. We do a big chili cook-off. And so we've got to do decorations, but we've got to include people by asking them to bring their chili so that it can be judged. And there's a group of folks who look forward to doing that every year. And that's the one thing they do. But it's a different group of folks who come on a weekly basis. Matt says trips have been a great way for me to get adult involved that he's been working on for a long time, which is huge. Talked to Matt last week. He even had an adult that dropped out at the last minute, and he had to fill that. So for him to be able to find somebody last minute to go on a trip, huge. That's awesome, Matt. The last scripture I want to share with you is Mark Mark chapter 3, 13 through 15. Jesus went up the mountain and called to him those whom he wanted, and they came to him. And he appointed 12, whom he also named apostles, to be with him and to be sent out to proclaim the message and to have authority to cast out demons. And this is a little bit of a recap, but Jesus called his disciples and gave them instructions. And this is the critical piece of this. He gave them authority. He gave them a specific role that they could do with, and they could have autonomy over that to go and cast out demons. So why is it important to give leaders identity and authority, and how do they respond when they have identity or when they're empowered to have it? I'd love to hear your thoughts either in chat or audio on that. Why is it important to give leaders identity and authority, and how do they respond? Chris says gives them ownership. Amen. Tina affirms them. Love it. Love it. Makes them feel important to your mission. Gives them a chance to provide original ideas and be appreciated. Yeah, this is all good stuff. Matt says people always respond better when they feel they have a purpose or are needed, and Shelby shows the leader that you don't have to be paid to be a leader. I know you're writing this out. I'm reading it out because we're recording it for those who might be tuning in later. So thank you. I want to share a case study of one of the churches that I've been working with. We do a lot of consulting with churches throughout the Midwest. And one of our partner churches, our client churches, is mid-sized. There are around 30 youth involved. And the youth minister is intentional about meeting others, not just the youth. And so he's involved with the men's group, goes golfing with them, does Bible study with them. And this youth minister believes anyone can be a leader. And so the adult leaders in the program have t-shirts. They don't wear them every week, but they wear them often, especially on Bring a Friend nights or special event nights. And so everybody has a job that contributes to the ministry. There are a group of parents and adult members that cook. There are some that clean up snacks. There are some that set out Bibles. There are some that lead Bible studies. There are some that lead the crafts. There are some that help set up chairs at the end and clean up the room. There are some that write postcards to the visitors who come for the first time that night. And there are some who serve in a committee structure because they don't really want to be around youth, but they want to support it. And so in this way, the ministry is truly intergenerational. He's got folks who are in college all the way through folks who are retired helping in this process. And kids see that. And parents are involved in a way that works. So a parent can be involved either peripherally or in a pretty hands-on way, depending on their relationship with their kid. And so the results, the case study results, what do you think happened? The youth minister made a personal ask of each volunteer leader and said, you are good at this. Would you be willing to do it with our youth group? The youth minister gave each leader authority and a job. The youth minister took the time to explain each role. Many adults and students took on leadership roles. The attendance in the group went up because of these roles, and those involved started to ask for more leadership roles. The young people noticed this, and so the young people then went to him and said, hey, we want to lead our own youth group. Would you let us be the leaders of our youth group? And sure enough, that youth group developed a really great leadership program, and it grew. And so it took time. I said, how long did this take you to put together? And he said, it took about 3 years to put this together. And I said, why did you do this? And he said, honestly, Matt, I was thinking about leaving. I was thinking about going to another church. And so I wanted to get people in place who could do the ministry if I wasn't there. Now that I'm sticking around, it's made my job a lot easier. And so it's a tremendous amount of work, but I would encourage you to work towards this. There are no magic beans. I can't say, hey, this is the best way to do this in your church, but I'd be happy to help. And so please reach out to me offline if you'd like to connect. And if you'd like to know who this youth minister is too, I can connect with you offline. Last, want to see if there's any questions or thoughts from you all before we head to the finish line here today. All right, webinars are kind of funky. So thanks for participating, and this has been really helpful. I do want to remind you all of our upcoming event, which is going to be pretty awesome in January at Montreat Conference Center. I'll make sure that Tanner has this information. If you're on my mailing list, I'll make sure and send this to you. And here's my information right here. You can find me online at yminstitute.com. Here's my email address. And of course, Tanner has this too. So it's been great. Thanks for allowing me to be part of this conversation today. I know Easter's coming, so this is awesome that you tuned in, but Wednesdays are typically a day the youth minister's in the office, so that's why we scheduled this.
I wanted just really quickly, Shelby chimed in and said, this has been really helpful. The culture at my church is that parents are generally hands-off when it comes to youth, and so I'm trying to change that. And Chris says, thank you. So I think this is certainly something I think everybody deals with. We see, particularly in youth conferences, a lot. This exact thing. So, which is actually, this is exactly the reason that we started hosting these things in the first place. Some people have literally, some of our youth leaders have literally written the books, you know, and are extremely networked in, and then others are volunteers or people that that have a passion for youth, or that there's somebody's mom, or, you know, all a host of different things. And so I think this is really helpful. Catherine says, thanks for providing this. Matt says, thank you guys. I'm having my first parent meeting at my new church Tuesday, so this is much needed. So talk about timely for Matt, for sure. So just a couple of quick things to lay out with you guys. We've got another one of these hosted on the 4th. Matt's also going to be hosting that. So I think Matt is very skilled at hosting these Zoom sessions. You either have a gift for it or you don't. I think he definitely does. This one is going to be 3 habits of highly effective youth ministers, which I think certainly everybody can use. So I'm excited to hear that. So we'll be back here same time, same place. Save the link. This, like I said, this video will be posted maybe in the next day or so. Zoom sometimes takes a while to send us the link of the recording, but once it does, we'll post it pretty promptly. And then last thing, just to remind people of, if you are coming to youth conferences, we've got kind of the last big deadline is coming up on April 20th. So if you're interested in coming and you haven't registered, sometime in the next month is certainly a good time to do that, although people register right up until the date. So so we're here if there's questions that you have about that, but I won't bore you with any other questions or comments on that at the moment. But look us up online, montreat.org/youth, if you have questions. So thank you guys so much. If there's nothing else, I'm going to let y'all go. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk soon.
I just put my email address in the chat window, so reach out to me if you'd like the slides. I can send them to you personally that way, probably the easiest thing. And hope to see you next week on Wednesday. Should be a pretty fun discussion about that. And gosh, have a great Easter on a blessed Holy Week. So thanks for
spread the word. We'd love to have more people show up. So this is a great crowd, and this is free to people, so we want to keep it out there. Thank you guys very much. You have a great one.